Check out that gorgeous and yet very purposeful and deadly fixed blade fighting knife. That is a SOG Agency in black titanium nitride. Sick. Hey guys, this is Nutnfancy. Time for a fixed blade knife review. I think you're going to dig it. Especially if you are a fan of a tactical fighting knife fixed blade variety. Let me give you a warning, however. If you are short on money, you might not want to watch the video. Because as I explain my own personal attraction to these types of knives, specifically the outstanding SOG Agency, you are going to want to order one for yourself. Yep, so you have been warned. Here we go. It's going to start off with a little bit of history and some philosophy, because that is necessary for me to describe my personal attraction to these blades. It goes something like this. If we go back to the Vietnam conflict in the 60s, I think we entered the conflict in 1965. We amazingly forgot as Americans some very critical, crucial battle lessons of World War II. In fact, as we took over that war from the French, I think early on, and actually throughout the war, we kind of got our butts handed to us by the Viet Cong in certain conflicts. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say that we got owned. We had our fair share of victories, but overall, the war, in most people's estimations, was a failure for the Americans. We did not win. We did not accomplish our political objectives. There's lots of things we could say about this. Why did it happen? What were the mistakes made? There's a lot we could say on the civilian front, how the civilians were making a lot of the decisions for the military, which is always a mistake, the tactical and strategic decisions. But let's go a little bit more towards the soldier side, the battle side of the Vietnam War. When I say we made some mistakes, I think we entered that war with an arrogant mindset. We underestimated the tenacity and the brutality of the Viet Cong. This was not the first time we had done this. If we go back to World War II, during the Pacific Island hopping towards Japan, we learned those same lessons with the cost of thousands of lives. The island of Baitio comes to mind. I mean, we lost a lot of Marines taking that one tiny little island as they were dug in with incredible tenacity. We underestimated them. We thought that they were smaller stature, that we could just roll over them with superior firepower. We could, shell the beach beforehand, and yeah, man, it's going to be a piece of cake. I think we brought that same mindset to the Vietnam War. The Viet Cong, they're primitive people. We're just going to roll in there in conventional battle fashion. We're going to march in there with platoons, lots of firepower. It did not work. Not in a lot of battles. The Viet Cong were extremely ingenious on how they attacked the Americans. Hit and run tactics. They used all kinds of improvised munitions very effectively. And also, this is really important, they didn't value life. They did not value their own soldiers. They would send them in waves of 100 against a reinforced compound. They lost them, so what? There's 1,000 more behind that we'll send. We've encountered enemy like this in other conflicts. I told you guys this was going to be interesting. The Korean War, we also saw this with the Chinese. Okay, we saw it with the Japanese in World War II, and we saw it again in Vietnam. You would think we would have these lessons down and we would remember them. Let's go back to WW2, Pacific War. How did we win that? I'll tell you how I think we won it. The U.S. Marines won it. Is they had a steep learning curve. Okay, they learned really quick that this was a brutal and very vicious and brave enemy. Do not underestimate them. They will not give up. They will fight to the death. They are very well armed. Sometimes they're crazy. They'll charge in broad daylight a fortified position and they'll die in the process. But I'll tell you what, those Marines learned very quickly to respect the Japanese as a vicious and deadly fighter. You can die in 2 seconds if you're not watching it. And I think what happened during that steep learning curve is we learned how to be equally vicious. There you have it. That's my opinion, and that's how we won the Pacific campaign, is we learned real quick we need to be brutal when we go to combat with these guys. We take a surrender. I'm kind of adding link to the the video, but it's interesting. You know, we take a surrender back in WW2 and we'd have Japanese soldiers walk up with white flags. You know, we take their surrender and lo and behold, the guy has a grenade. He sets it off, kills about 4 Marines. Under the white flag of surrender. They did not necessarily adhere to Western standards of fighting. They just did not. Neither did the Viet Cong. And so we kind of had to put that aside and say, okay, how are we going to defeat this enemy? Then we get kind of towards the Special Operations Forces in Vietnam. So while we had our main forces operating with certain levels of effectiveness, in my estimation, I would say very reduced levels of effectiveness. The Viet Cong could hear us coming miles away. They could smell us coming miles away. We fought in an unconventional enemy in a conventional fashion, and that is doomed to fail. By the way, we're kind of doing that in Afghanistan, in my opinion, too. It just won't work. Not if you want lasting success. You got to get unconventional, dudes. You got to get nasty. Okay? There's Nutnfancy on his soapbox. I'm dead serious. And that's what special operations were allowed to do to some levels in the Vietnam conflict. I don't think, and don't believe the video game, Special Operations Forces, and when I'm saying that, I'm talking SOG, I'm talking SEALs, Army Rangers, other Special Operations Forces were allowed to operate with a lot greater latitude behind enemy lines in the Vietnam conflict. They are a force multiplier. Okay, they will not win a war for you, but they will multiply your conventional forces if they're used correctly, and in my opinion, if they're given the latitude to do what they do best, and that is to go behind enemy lines and kick ass. That's what they do. I told you guys this was interesting. That's what our special forces, SF guys in Vietnam did. Now we get to the blade. I think these guys that went behind enemy lines in the Vietnam conflict, let's just concentrate, I don't know, Navy SEALs for instance. They liked weapons that were representative of the extreme danger these guys faced. And I will tell you what, they understood firsthand about the brutality of the enemy they were facing, and they would stand toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose, literally with these guys, and take them out with a tool just like you see on the table. Okay, we're talking warfare, we're talking brutal warfare. Sometimes that's what's necessary to win. The SF guys did this. Okay, and the blades that represent this whole mindset of getting the job done no matter how bloody it's going to get. I'm sorry, I'm just speaking honestly with you guys. They were badges of honor. Okay, a good example of this was the Randall No. 1 knife. And in a lot of ways, the SOG Agency is patterned after that blade. In 1965, Randall was selling these to SF guys, is my understanding. Now, there's a lot of interpretations of who actually got the Randall No. 1s, which forces did they get to, how much action did they see. I don't know. Keep in mind, like I've said in other reviews, a lot of the blades in the Vietnam conflict were hunting knives. Okay, it was a very new thing back then to have a purpose-built, tactical fixed blade fighting knife. And what set the Randall No. 1 apart is it was just that. It was a no apologies, in your face, I'm going to go behind enemy lines. If things get nasty, I'm going to get nastier mindset. That's how you win wars, guys. That is how you win. Superior firepower, superior commitment to battle. Okay, and the miniature wars, in my understanding, my reading, my research, and personal interviews that I've conducted with guys that were there, they did just that. They went in there and they cleaned house, and it was brutal. And it was not something they relished. It's not something they liked. They didn't look forward to it, but there was a mission that had to be done, and they did it. And one of the badges of honor was a special knife that would represent that mindset. Witness the Randall No. 1, witness the SOG Agency, which is an outgrowth of that knife. How's that for an intro? I'm 10 minutes in, I haven't even started talking about the blade, but now I'm telling you why myself, and I think why thousands of others hold such an attraction to these blades. Because it represents that mindset. It's a no compromise approach to battle. And more than that, it's an approach, it's a style all its own. Now we got to be careful here because we don't want to go into tactical style just for the sake of style, and I honestly see a lot of that these days. Keep in mind the 60s, that was unheard of. They didn't have video games. There was no such thing as tacticool. They didn't know any of that. And yet the SEALs, the other SF guys, established their own style because of what they were doing. They had their own camouflage pattern, they had their own knives, they had a Rolex watch, they had divorce papers, all those other things that come along with the business. They had their own style, and it was their own club. And only guys who actually did that job would understand how brutal it was, how deadly it was. You see where I'm coming from? The SOG Agency, with its beautiful lines, captures the elegance, I think, of the Randall number 1. And while I don't have a Randall number 1 on the table, I do have a Blackjack Model 1-7, which is almost an identical copy. This is also a gorgeous and very purposeful fighting blade. You might as well be looking at a Randall number 1 right here. I will review it separately. And a lot of the philosophy will be similar because these two blades are offshoots of the Vietnam conflict, right? They are. They represent that mindset. But there's more to it than that. If it was just a mindset, it was just approach to battle, and we had a stupid blade that didn't have a good design, that didn't have a good balance, and what good is it? I think the reason the Randall number 1 to this day remains a huge favorite of men who go to dangerous places, and I'm talking very dangerous places, house to house, hand to hand, whatever it takes, getting the job done. They still love that knife because it is a classic, because it is, let's just jump in POU right now, it is a fighting knife extraordinaire. Okay, I'm not reviewing this knife here, but I'll kind of play off of it a little bit. The SOG Agency is that knife. It makes a few departures from the Randall number 1, which I think is totally adequate. I have no issues with it at all. But talking about POU, philosophy of use, this is a fighting blade, guys. More importantly, it's a style. I don't know if anybody want to use that word. It is a, well, go ahead. It is a style all its own, just like the Randall number 1 was. And that's what SOG excels at capturing. Not in just the agency, but several of their medium to large sized fixed blades. They capture that Vietnam specialness. I said that in the Tech Bowie review, remember? I showed you those pictures and stuff. I'll roll some in this video too. The Tech Bowie, the Trident, the SOG Demo, the Recon Bowie, I guess I should say Bowie. All beautiful knives capturing that essence. Philosophy of use, it's a fighting blade. But like I said, if it did not have substance, if it just had all show and no go, who gives a crap, right? But that's not the SOG Agency in my estimation. When you pick this knife up, you're going to find out that it is extremely fast in hand. It weighs about 10 ounces is all. They didn't make the blade too thick. It's 0.15 inches in thickness. There's some carving going on the blade. I'm talking about the elimination of steel. It's hollow ground, and it's extremely fast and lively in hand, the SOG Agency. Just like the Randall model, our number 1, just like this knife, the Blackjack 1-7, same. To be honest, the SOG Agency is faster than this knife. Not a knife fighting expert. I've said that before, I'll say it again. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand the balance, which is actually superb in the SOG Agency. It is superb. Yeah, there's substance to this knife. Philosophy of use fighting blade. Also, obviously, as I've introed, this video is going to go long, but man, it is fascinating to me personally. I think as a knife fan, it will be to you as well. It's going to be a collectible second POU. There's guys that have no intention whatsoever of ever running this knife in a combat POU. I think the huge majority, thank heavens, that you don't have to ever do that personally. I hope that for you. But they understand and they appreciate the bravery of the guys that do it and that have done it, and the style which this knife represents. So while conventional forces sometimes are out there getting their butts kicked, not due to any fault of their own, they're brave, they're smart, they have their style their own, and they place plenty of hurt on the enemy, but mostly leadership and political decisions of how they're employed. The other guys, the SF guys with more latitude, are able to go put some hurt real hurt on the enemy and become force multipliers in the process. Some guys love that. This knife represents that. That, as I see it, is the two distinct POUs for this knife. Man, this is a fun review. I'm enjoying the heck out of it. I already talked about weight. It's light. This is a light blade, dude. 7.5 inches long. I love fighting knives that have reach. Okay, I'm not one of these guys that says, oh, I need a 3-inch blade and that would get the job done. Well, depending on what you're doing. I'm talking fighting knife. I mean, you're going hut to hut, house to house. You got to take out whoever you got to take out. Do I want a small blade or a long blade? All kinds of philosophies on this. I'm not the expert, but I have opinions. You're looking about the size of blade I like. 7.5 inches, maybe even longer depending. Especially when it's not overly heavy like this knife. With the sheath, the knife is 15.6 ounces. That's what I weigh it, the SOG Agency. The weight is excellent for the amount of reach you get, for the deadliness of the blade. The feel is superb. I'll get to the handle details here in a sec. There's lots to talk about. Blade steel. That's AUS 8 blade steel. And I love SOG's, SOG's AUS 8. It's a Japanese medium to high grade steel. It will rust out on you if you abuse it. I've shown you that on camera before, but it is cryo treated, I believe, as SOG does it, even in this knife. Takes a razor sharp edge. I think it's a great choice. Out of box, this thing is wicked sharp. As most SOG knives are, at least they're fixed blades. Look at that beautiful finish on that. You're looking at my favorite version. This also comes in a satin version, the SOG Agency. It is beautiful. I love the satin, but this black version, it just calls to me like a mermaid on the shore. As I paddle by my rowboat, I am helpless to resist. Beautiful, and it's protective, so maybe that, I don't know, I wouldn't say lack of rust resistance of the AUS 8, but it's going to be enhanced with the titanium nitride finish on it. Look at the blade shape. Reminiscent, once again, of the Randall #1 with some variations. Now you can see the unsharpened false edge running on the top of the blade, just like the Randall #1 had, okay? This is, I've looked and studied the Randall #1. This is like its mirror image. Long, unsharpened swedge on the top. Long ricasso here. So you can see there's a, we have a little run here before the blade starts. That's how the #1 was, and I haven't found out anybody who complained about that, by the way. SOG Agency's got that going on too. But it does a variation stylistically in that it has kind of a scalloped portion as it goes towards the double quillion guard. I actually like that. Okay, now this is a gorgeous knife. I don't know if I'd ever want to put jimping on there. I don't even know why I said that. This guard, by the way, is shorter than the Randall #1. Okay, this is more representative, but it's still a little bit shorter. If the pictures I see of the Randall #1, the guard's a little bit more extended. Let's be careful though, and I'm throwing out the Randall #1 a lot, but I don't want you guys to say or to run away going, oh, the Randall #1 is the best fighting knife ever devised by mankind. That is not true. Okay, back in 1965, the answer was probably yeah, it was. But a lot of time has passed, and there is a lot of wicked, beautifully designed, fast, well-balanced, great steel blades on the market. I've reviewed them. I'm reviewing more as time goes on. So don't think that. I am giving credit where credit's due, and that is a beautiful, enduring design with a Randall #1. And one that obviously has withstood the test of time, and I myself, Nutnfancy, I respect that. And any weapon I throw on the reviewing table, if it has withstood the test of time, it still works, that the guys going in harm's way still love it, then some props are due, and that's what I'm doing. The reason I'm saying this now is because I don't want you to think, in my opinion, that a huge guard is necessary. I actually like how this Blackjack 1.7 is doing it. I think that's ideal. Again, the guard is going to prevent the ingress of our hand as we go into a thrust attack, a stabbing attack. Let's go to the SOG Agency. Same. A little shorter, and it's more curved. So it has a curved, and I believe this is aluminum. I could be wrong on the material. It might be steel. Guard on that. Okay, and that gets to the jimping. With a guard so well designed and so perfect, you don't need no jimping up there. The whole idea for jimping is traction, right? Tactical traction so we don't cut our tendons up. Man, that's a beautiful blade. Sharp. Hollow ground in this one. The blackjack is convex. I believe... Actually, I forget. Random model number 1, I think that was... I forget. Hollow ground? You see it in pictures there. Whatever it was. The grinding is almost secondary. Except for this, with a hollow ground blade, it's going to be lighter. Again, faster in hand. Whew, man, I gotta get going. Design and steel. So great steel on that. This one's an A2, incidentally. I'll say that again when I review it. Let's go to the handle of the SOG Agency. There's a lot of love still for the stacked leather handle. That surprises me, actually. I mean, with all the cool materials that we have, the stacked leather handle is still selling well. I know it's selling well because I frequent the same sites you guys do, and I'll look and I'll go, man, that thing is just sold out again. A lot of them are SOG knives with a stacked leather handle. Maybe it's a SOG Bowie, Bowie, whatevs, you know, and other versions. Now this one is epoxy impregnated, so that's going to make it more durable. I will tell you this from my own experience, a stacked leather handle from a first kind of cool perspective ain't so great. Especially in moist jungle environments as it rains, as it precipitates. You know, it's not great. It's going to swell and it's going to get ruined. Okay, so that's first kind of cool practicality. Second kind of cool, oh dudes, it rocks because again, it's tying into that mystique of these fighting blades that are so proven with the SF forces. You see what I'm saying? So guys like that. You like that if you're watching this far into the video, 22 minutes. I guarantee it. You're like me. I like it too. It's beautiful. As executed by SOG, I think it's excellent. It is not outstanding. I'm not going to lie. Outstanding to me would be there is no line at all between the spacers here, which by the way are colorful. I like them. They're cool looking. But there are some raised lines here. If I were to turn it, there's a raised line here. It's not a smooth flow. You might have to go to a semi-custom knife to get that level of quality. I think it's pretty good. I also like it a little bit darker. Here I am getting particular. You guys like my particularness though, right? I would like a little bit darker leather. Okay, it's a little bit light colored. Let me roll in a Boker Reproduction US M3 knife. There you go. There's leather. I like that color right there. Now, as far as the execution go, quality is at the same level. I don't know. This is actually a very good reproduction of an M3, in my estimation. Now, is it totally authentic? I don't know. It's good looking though. Back to the agency though. I think the handle, or the leather handle, is beautiful, and I think thematically with the black, oh man, it just works. There's a way to throw your lanyard in there, okay? And then they have that awesome flush-mounted spanner nut on this full-tang knife. Like I said in the SOG Tech Bowie review, I love it. I like the flush mount. That's a great way to deliver a non-lethal impact. Ouch. Ergonomically speaking, the handle is good, long enough for some great real estate. Forward and reverse grips is excellent. Very ergonomic. Notice too it deviates from the Randall number 1 in that it has a dished out portion as we go towards the guard. I like that. Because it seems like this swell right here locks it into the hand a little bit better. Don't get me wrong, I still like the Randall theme as well. It's also very ergonomic. Feels great in hand. Look at the thickness differences on the blade. I'm not going to say I don't like thick knives, but in a fighting knife of this sort, I don't know if we need that full thickness. I like the thickness, the 0.15 inch thickness here. I do. I will say the handle overall is excellent. Are you getting that? How about the sheath? Man, this is a fun review. Black leather sheath, and just like Randall number 1, it comes with an included stone. Extra value. That's cool. But you can see thematically it's adhering to that Vietnam era fighting knife formulation. And I think that's a good thing. I think the quality of the sheath is excellent. I didn't use a sharpening stone. I never intend to. I generally think that's a second kind of cool thing for me. I don't generally go with stones. I go with something more effective. Edge, you know, something like Apex Pro or something. Stitching is excellent. It's riveted where it needs to be. That lanyard hole is not punched through all the way. You may have to do that yourself if you need to do it. Putting the knife in and out, we can see there's a nice spacer there so you don't cut your stitching. It's a very conventional sheath, so it loops over. There's no molly capabilities to it. So, if I was in Afghanistan, I see some dude trucking down. Let me just tell you this now. If I saw some dude trucking down with a SOG agency, I'm going to give him extra cool points immediately. Immediately. Not because he's tapping into that mystique that we're talking about, but because this is a very awesome fighting blade. And actually it could be pressed into service and other uses too. Food preparation, utility tasks. It is rather long. You should have a little tiny pocket knife on your person for that. How about a SOG Flash 1, one of my all-time faves. Have that. Weighs 1.2 ounces. Use this for killing bad guys, dudes. I'd say, dude, that is freaking sick. 10 cool points immediately. Now, if he has, this sheath I don't think is ideal for attachment to LBE. You can do it. I've done it before. I've shown you ways you can do it. I think it sucks for that. But if he had a Kydex made for it, custom Kydex, and he's rocking a SOG agency, oh man. Huge cool points, man. This is a very capable blade. I think for the theme of the Vietnam era, the leather sheath makes a lot of sense. Cost-wise, it's going to make a lot of sense. And I think, honestly, a lot of guys, if we threw a plastic sheath on there, like in Conceal X or something, I think a lot of guys just go, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. That does not make sense. You're doing a beautiful fighting knife like this, Vietnam era throwback, leather, stack leather handle, and you throw a plastic sheath in it. You see what I'm saying? It's that kind of blade, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think the sheath is just fine. How about competitive options? A couple of them I've thrown out already, and they're also SOG blades. Okay, there's very few companies that are really capturing this mystique that I'm talking about. And I'm talking production blades. Now, if you want to go custom, you have all the money in the world, rock on. Go and spend your $700 on a custom blade. And by the way, I don't fault you for that at all. I just think for most guys, our money could be spent better with it. That's why they watch the Nutnfancy project, because I try my best to tune you into things where I think you can spend your money better. Here's one right here, SOG Agency. Competitive options, I said some. SOG Bowie 2.0. SOG Tech Bowie, let's see, the SOG, I use those interchangeably, I'm sorry. SOG Trident, SOG Demo, Recon Bowie. How about that Blackjack? Oh, man. Like I said, I'm going to review this separately. This is a beautifully executed knife. And this is a US-made knife. This is a Taiwanese produced blade. Okay, and we see the differences in prices. This is going to run you about $1.80, and that's if you can find it. I'll repeat that. That is if you can find it. This is not a widely produced blade, especially in the colorations you might want. This is in black micarta. $1.80 in the black titanium nitride. $1.30, $1.25. Look in the upper right. That's where I say go get it. That is a lot of blade for the money. Let's say you pay $125 for this black agency, dude. That is huge value. You want a US produced blade? Go search this out. You'll pay more. Is it worth it? Listen, I'm not playing favorites between these two. I love them both and equally. I'll say this, the SOG Agency is definitely worth it. And the quality control, everything I can see in this knife. Are we down to quality already? Already. 28 minutes in. Is outstanding. Okay, SOG is great at that. They're not perfect, and no knife maker is perfect. You may get a SOG knife that has some issues. I mean, Bucketnuster, my buddy, got a SOG Bowie knife, and the sheath was too long. They made a mistake. They just included one that was too long. No big deal. Call SOG up. They'll fix you up. They're just like all these other awesome knife companies. They have awesome customer service. They're not perfect. No company is, but they're pretty darn good. Okay, and it's all about quality control. It doesn't really matter where the blade is made. Heck, I'm making it in Pakistan. But if I go there and I train my employees, say, this is a level that it absolutely positively has to be produced at. If it's not, you don't have a job. They'll get it. That's what they're doing with this knife. Quality control is awesome. And if you have an issue with it being produced in Taiwan, understood, I understand. I'm not going to fault you for it. Competitive options, so I told you the Blackjack. There's some Bark River knives out there that are just beautiful. Beautiful. I've covered the Bark River Bowie knife. Oh man, it's a bigger knife. It's a huge fighting blade. It's definitely not as light and fast in hand as this one. I love it though. It's mean though. There's really not a ton of options when you talk to this level. Okay, I'm talking that taps into that mystique, and we're going with a stacked leather, maybe micarta handle. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Two kinds of cool. Man, if you haven't gotten it by now, dudes, I don't know what to tell you. Second kind of cool on this knife is off the charts. Because to me, it does capture the mystique of SF and what they are capable of doing, what they've done in the past. And if you didn't know this, I'm a retired military lieutenant colonel myself. Not SF, I'm Air Force dude. But I'll tell you what, throughout my career, I ran into them plenty enough. And I'll tell you this, any real SF guy I ran into was extremely low-key. You would never know it. I'm dead serious. I carried them on my jet all the time. They're like, what are those guys? They're SF. You would never know it. They're just low-key. They talk quietly, and they carry a big stick. Guys that are really getting it done, they don't need to brag. They don't do nothing. They don't dig it either. It's just their job. They get in there. Sometimes just get in there and kill people. That's what they do sometimes. Not always. Sometimes they're just getting intelligence, whatever they do. This knife captures that. Getting it, huge, second kind of cool. But again, there's depth there. There's substance with the SOG Agency. It is an outstanding blade in and of its own right as a modern day fighting blade. The SOG Agency. It is. It's extremely fast, sharp, capable. I didn't really talk about the tip capabilities. You can see it right here. Sharp, great penetrator. Some belly there for good cutting. I mean, I wouldn't change anything about it, really. And in a perfect world, could it maybe make as an additional accessory a Kydex or, I hate to say it because I was saying I wouldn't do it, but plastic option for guys who are going in harm's way. Especially in jungle environments where leather does not make any kind of sense whatsoever. And I'll say this, over the Randall Model 1, this AUS-8 steel will have an advantage. You know, because it's more rust resistant. This one's an A2 tool steel. That is not rust resistant. Pretty much a tool steel. Got to take care of it. Value. Well, I already said it. You're getting a lot of knife for the money, guys. A lot of knife for the money. If you go with a satin version at about $105, again, go to the place I recommend that I've annotated. I'll do it again. Great deal. Great deal. SOG Agency. Yes, I remain amazed at how quickly we lose those hard-won lessons of combat in the Pacific, in the Korean War, and in the Vietnam War, and we keep forgetting them, and we have to learn them all over again. But sometimes you're going to have to stand toe-to-toe with the enemy, and you're going to have to get freaking nasty if you want to win the war. That's just the way it is. That's the way we've won wars in the past. That's how I think. And I think these knives right here are an embodiment. They are an embodiment of that philosophy. For guys that were doing it, no apologies. Yeah, Mystique, awesome. SOG Agency review, Nutnfancy. See ya.